everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name is Brittany of BrittanyJJones.com, and in today's video we are finally sewing along to Butterick 6137. Before we start the video though, I want to do something a little different that I've never done before. I don't think I've ever come back on and giving you a review of it because I have made the pants already. I'm actually wearing them. I just came back from photographing them, and in my honest opinion, for me and for my body type, they are just okay. I'm not really in love with them. I feel as though the front center seam is still really long. Just really, it's not flattering. The crotch is really low. So one adjustment I wish I would have done is taking that center seam. You know, you got this center curve here for the crotch. I should have pinched out a little bit of fabric there to take off all that extra, because it's a really long center front seam and it drops pretty low. And that just is not flattering for me because I do have a little bit of a tummy, and that just kind of, you know, adds, it just looks weird. It's a little weird looking. I'm not like really like, I'm not loving that. Another thing is the leg is really full. And then I mentioned that later on in the video that I did do an adjustment. I did take the leg in a little bit to eliminate some of that fullness because it was really full. And I was like, this is too much. I don't like that. So I did take that in. I also cut off a length. You'll see that later in the video. So I'm trying to think of other things that I want to mention about it. I think they look great on the model, but as far as me, being 5'4", being curvy, having to go up a size in it, they're just not really flattering to me. Do I think this is a fail or a mistake? Absolutely not. It's just learning. Like, I'm still learning, and that's just a part of sewing. You're gonna have some wins, you're gonna have some loses. Even if you make a muslin, stuff still may not turn out that great, and that's all right. I have that in my head now. So now I know to do that. That's why I say I don't consider it a fail or a mistake. It's just a learning experience. But I wanted to come on here and share that with you all because, like I said, I've never done it before, and I'm wearing the pants right now. I can't get my leg up here. Okay, there it is. That's about all you can see on the pants. Oh, one more thing I do want to mention. I did go in on my waist measurement, and I'm going to show you how that looks on the pattern. Now, if you decide to do that, please know, if you're going to use woven fabric, you may have to shimmy up your pants because you are now taking a smaller waist measurement and you have to pull it over a fuller hip. So you're trying to pull that small waist over that full hip, you're going to have to shimmy it up. So I just wanted to mention that if you're going to be sewing with woven fabric, you may not have that issue with knit fabric, but if you're sewing with woven and if you grade in for your waist measurement, you're going to have to shimmy that thing up, girl. All right, y'all, so that is all I wanted to say to give my little review before we even get into the video. I don't even know if that's like the proper way to do things, but I just had to turn this camera on. I was like, I have to let them know that I am not really in love with this pattern. I don't think I will make it again. I will probably give it away. It's just not going to be a repeat pattern for me. Will I still wear these? Of course, I made them. I don't like the long crotch, but I can wear them around the house or whatever. So I just want to let you all know that. So now let's go straight to, I'm going to skip over the intro I already did. And I'm going to go straight into showing you how my pattern looked after I added the extra size and made it a 24. So let's go ahead and get into that. All right, y'all, so here is my altered pattern. You can see here I got some tissue on the sides because I decided that I wanted to increase the size of the pattern to a 24. That would give me a finished hip measurement of 51.5. So that's what I did. I took some tissue paper, I cut it into some strips. Honestly, this came wrapped in some fabric and I was like, oh, let me just use that. And so I'm gonna show you really quickly what I did. So I took my ruler here, and I did this all in small increments. I didn't just, you know, go to one side and add 2 inches because that would just totally mess things up. So I took my ruler and I measured between each pattern size to get the distance. And then I went over whatever that distance was and I increased that size. For this part of the pattern, all of these are at a 1/2 inch. So I just went over here for 1/2 inch and I added on the size. I'll talk about this in just a minute. And so then I did that all in small increments, because just because it's a 1/2 inch up here, it's not a 1/2 inch all the way down the pattern leg. So again, I just did the same thing. I measured all of the sizes. Whatever that measurement was, I just added it over to the side to just increase the size of the pattern. I did it again all the way down to the bottom. Didn't have to do it to the hem because they're, you know, it's all just one size hem. I did it over here to the inseam. Again, just measured all of the distance between these sizes and added that distance to the side. Now up here around the crotch was kind of tricky. I had to go dumpster diving. Not really dumpster diving, but I did have to go in my trash because I had cut this off and trashed it. So I had to find that piece and tape it back on here so I could, again, measure the distance between everything and get another size for the 24 that I just added onto the pattern. So you can see here that I did all of that for the pattern. I also did it for the back of the pattern too. Measured the distance between everything. I did it in small increments, like I said, just because it's 3/8 of an inch up here doesn't mean it's 3/8 of an inch down here, and you can see that it's not. Once I got down here toward the end, I just kind of merged the line in because I really can't tell. Had to go dumpster diving for this part too. But the same thing, like I said on the back, I measured between the distance of all the sizes, and I just measured over that size to increase my pattern. So that is what I did. Now back to this part, I said I wanted to cut my waist measurement up here to kind of eliminate some of that excess fabric that I had. And I said I was gonna cut the 18, so that's what I did. This is what this line here is. So I started at 18, I just slowly merged the lines over to this 24. And you can see down here is the hip measurement. So by the time I get over here by the hip, I will have enough room and it won't be any pulling across this front part like it was. So that is it for my pattern. I also cut down my waistband to an 18 too, since I'm starting at an 18 now on my front. So I'm gonna do that for the back piece too. I'm gonna grab my little hip curve ruler here. Let me find my pen. And I can see from this pattern that by the time I got to the notch, I was on the new pattern line that I made. So I'm just gonna do the same thing for over here. I'm gonna come down a little bit because I didn't start right at the 18, I came down just a little bit from it. Okay, so now I'm gonna trim all this off and bring it down to this new line. Do the same thing for this side, and I'm ready to cut my pattern out. Okay, y'all, so I have my fabric all cut out and I'm ready to begin sewing. First thing we're gonna do is start with our pocket. So if you're gonna be sewing view A or B, we're gonna get ready to start here on step 1. So go ahead and get your pocket piece out and your iron, because we need to press 1/4 of an inch on this upper edge of the pocket. So let's go ahead and grab the iron and press that down now. Okay, so I'm just gonna turn under 1/4 of an inch right here on this edge of the pocket and press that down in place. If you're not okay with eyeballing it, then get you a little seam gauge or your little ruler and go ahead and fold in 1/4 of an inch. And now we're gonna turn the upper edge of the pocket along the fold line. We had our fold line here. I snipped mine. So I'm gonna just turn the pocket in along the fold line and press this down as well. Now I'm gonna take it to the machine and I'm gonna baste it close to this inner edge. I'm gonna do the same thing for this pocket here too. So I'm gonna press the whole pocket out. Turn in 1/4 of an inch, and again, this is for view A and B. Fold along the fold line. Now I can go ahead and baste both of these again close to the inner edge. All right, so I have them basted down, and you can also see I have the wrong thread in my machine. I looked at this and I was like, oh, what are we doing? What are we doing? But I changed my thread. This is basted, so now on step 3, we can just stitch along the basting line on the outside. So we're gonna top stitch this in place on the outside. So let's go ahead and do that now. Okay, so you can't see it, but I have went ahead and top stitched, and I tried to top stitch right beside the basting stitch instead of directly on it, so I could just easily pull the basting stitch out. Sometimes when you stitch right on it, the threads will get tangled and the basting stitch won't just slide out. So There it is. I took the basting stitch out and do the same thing for this one here. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and press over this again. Okay, now we can move on to the next step. Okay, so we're still right here with our ironing board in the pocket. For the next step, we are going to press in along the seam allowance on this long side here for the pocket as well as the short side. So it's 5/8 of an inch all the way around, and I did go ahead and grab my seam gauge so I can measure it out accurately and press it down. So for this corner right here, I'm gonna fold it up to this little point. And I'm gonna press it. And then I'm gonna fold it to create that point for the corner. So that is how I do my corners like this. There may be another way to do it. If you have another way of doing it, let me know down in the comments, but that is how I do my corners. Then I just press it down to give it a nice point here on the corner. So I'm gonna go ahead and do this to the other pocket. Okay, so now let's go ahead and grab our pants and we can pin the pocket onto the pant. Okay, so this is one of my pants front, and here's my pocket. I'm just gonna lay my pocket on. I'm gonna show you all right quick. Here's one of my markings right here, and here's the other marking that I transferred. Now my pocket is not lining up at these markings. It could be because I did do some adjusting. So I'm just gonna slide my pocket over here to the side where it's supposed to be. And this marking right here is not gonna go there either. So I'm just gonna make sure that the pocket is at the top and on the side here. So this is where mine is. Again, mine is not at the markings that I transfer, and like I said, it could be because I did adjust the pattern a little bit. So I'm just going to pin it down. Okay, so now that the pocket is pinned on, we can take this to the machine and we can edge stitch all the way around this long edge here and this lower edge of the pocket. I'm gonna go ahead and sew the other pocket on the same way. While you're still here at the machine, go ahead and baste across the top of the pocket as well as the side seam of the pocket. Let's go ahead and baste that down right now while we're here at the machine. Okay, so here are the pants fronts and both of the pockets are sewn on. The next step is to go ahead and grab the back piece. So here is my back pattern piece right here. Now with right sides facing, I'm gonna go ahead and stitch the outer seam as well as the inner seam together. So go ahead and start pinning, matching up your notches right now. Okay, so now I have the side seam pinned and the inseam. So I'm gonna go ahead and pin the other pant leg together the exact same way, and then I'm gonna go to the sewing machine and sew it down at a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. All right, you can see that I have sewn up the side seam as well as the inseam of the pants, and I finished off the edge with my serger. The next step is for us to go ahead and gather the lower edge of the hem. So I'm gonna go ahead and put 2 rows of basting stitches around the hem of the pant right now. Alright, so I have the gathers at the hem of the pants. So now we have to fuse interface into our leg cuff pieces. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the leg cuff pieces, put them right sides together. Pin here. We're going to stitch down this seam, and then once we have it stitched on the side that is unnotched, you should have put a notch on one side of the cuff. Let me find my notch. Ooh, where is it? Where is the notch? I know I notched it. I don't see it though. Here it is. So on the unnotched side, we're going to turn up 3/8 of an inch and press that down. So go ahead and stitch your seam, and on the unnotched edge, press up 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. So let's go ahead and do that now. Okay, with the cuff sewn, I'm going to go ahead and trim my seam down. Now I'm going to press open the seam. Okay, now I have both of the cuffs pressed, so now we can move on to the next step. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and find my notch. I'm going to find my notch first, and I'm going to go ahead and, well, let me pull this out, right sides out. Okay, now I'm going to pull up my gather so that it fits the cuff. I'm just going to continue pulling up my gather so that it fits the cuff and that they're evenly distributed. And then once they are, I'm going to go ahead and just start pinning everything in place. Now that I have both cuffs pinned on, I can go ahead and take it to the sewing machine, and we're going to stitch it around at a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, so I have the cuffs sewn, and I've also trimmed down the seam. I'll be honest, I'm not really loving these gathers, but I mean, I guess they're okay. I wanted it to be like a little bit more of them, but they're just like a little bit. But anyway, here is the cuff. So now I'm gonna go ahead and press the seam up toward the cuff. Once we have it pressed, we're gonna fold this along the fold line, and then we can slip stitch this in place. I am thinking that I'm going to just edge stitch really close to this seam, but the choice is yours. You can get your needle and thread out and hand stitch this down, or you can just do a really nice edge stitch really close to the seam, and that is what I'm gonna do for this cuff. But first, I'm gonna go ahead and press the seam up, and then I will come back and pin the hem in place all the way around, and then take it to the machine and do an edge stitch really close to that seam. Okay, I have the cuffs pinned in place, so now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to stitch it along the right side. I'm going to try to pull this through here. Okay, I'm going to go to the machine. I'm going to do an edge stitch really close to the seam all the way around the cuff of the pants. So that's what I'm going to go ahead and do right now. Okay, so this is the cuff, and this is how it looks on the inside of it. So now I'm going to go ahead and do the other cuff the same way, stitching as close as I can to this edge. Okay, I have both of the cuffs sewn on, and again, this is how they look on the inside. I chose to do an edge stitch. The directions do say slip stitching, so I mean the choice is yours. You can slip stitch it or you can edge stitches, but I went with the edge stitch. The next couple of steps is for view C and view D. Go ahead and follow step 12 through 17, and once you have those steps done, then we all will start back up at step 18 for all views, and that is to sew the crotch seams together. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this one right size in. I'm going to put this leg inside of here. Okay, so cut these off. For these seams, I'm not going to have them going the same way because that will create bulk. So I'm going to turn one this way and turn the other going the opposite direction. That way it's not that bulky. So I'm going to match up the seams, pin there, and then pin the rest of the center seam in place, matching up my notches along the way. Okay, so now that it's pinned, I'm gonna go ahead and stitch at a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. But right here along the curve, after I have it stitched, I'm gonna stitch again at 1/4 of an inch just to reinforce it. So stitch all the way around at a 5/8 of an inch, but then right here at the curve, come back inside the seam allowance and stitch at 1/4 of an inch. So the center seam is sewn, and I also went ahead and finished it off with my serger. I also tried my pants on. The leg is a little bit more baggy than what I wanted. I really do wish I would have tapered it in a little bit more and maybe gathered this up some more, but it is what it is. So I'm just gonna leave it how it is now and just continue sewing. So the next step is to go ahead and start working on the waistband. On your pattern piece, you can see that it has dots on both ends. It really should just be on one end. If you look over on step 19, you can see that only one end has the dots and the other one is sewn straight down. So I am going to do my waistband how that diagram is, because of that diagram is right. You don't need both of these open, because when you start to put your elastic casing in, you're going to have an opening on both sides of the waistband, when we really just need an opening on one side of the waistband, so we can just slip stitch that one side closed instead of having two openings. So I am going to keep this side open, and I'm going to stitch this one all the way down. And by keep this side open, I mean I'm going to start stitching here, stop at the dot, and then leave this open so we can put the elastic through, start back stitching here and close it down. I also noticed that these two dots are pretty close together, and the elastic is bigger than that. So this is going to be kind of tight to wiggle this thick elastic through. So I'm going to make my opening just a little bit bigger so that I can get this elastic through easy. I would rather have the opening to be bigger and I can just slip stitch it closed once I have the elastic all through, instead of it being smaller and I have to fold the elastic, and you know, just it's a little bit more work when the opening is smaller than the elastic. So I'm just gonna sew mine a little bit bigger so it'll be easier for me to put the elastic through. So there is one pin, and I'm gonna put the other one down here so I'll be able to put my elastic through a little bit easier from this opening as opposed to these two dots. So I just wanted to show you all that's what I'm gonna do. So now I'm gonna go ahead and pin this side and take it to the sewing machine and go ahead and stitch this down. And again, stitch and stop, start stitching and stop here, leaving this opening for the elastic. So now I'm just pressing down the waistband seams, and you can always baste these down in place if you have a hard time getting the elastic through. As you're pulling it through your waistband, sometimes the seam allowances will get in place. So if you just want to baste these down on each side, that's an option for you. Okay, so on our unnotched side, you have notches on one side of your waistband. Here's the notches on this side. So on the unnotched side, we are going to turn up 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. I'm gonna find my seam gauge here and press 3/8 of an inch all the way around. Okay, now we can go ahead and pin it to the pant. So with right sides facing, I'm going to go ahead and match up my notches first. Side seams next, and then I'll just pin the rest of the pant down. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and sew all the way around this waistband. Okay, so I have the waistband sewn on, and I just realized that I said to press up 3/8 of an inch. We're supposed to press up 5/8 of an inch and trim it down to 3/8 of an inch. So I'm gonna go ahead and get my ironing board back up and just press this to a 5/8 of an inch and then trim it down to 3/8 of an inch. So I have this trimmed down to a 3/8 of an inch. Now I'm going to go ahead and just trim down this waistband seam here. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and press this seam up toward the waistband now. Next thing for us to do is to fold this down over the waistband along the fold line. So very similar to what we did to the cuff. Just going to fold this over and then press this down right over that seam allowance. So I'm going to go ahead and do that right now. Okay, so now that I have the waistband pressed down, I'm going to go ahead and start pinning on the right side of the fabric, because the directions do say to slip stitch it, but I'm going to do the same thing I did for my cuff, and I'm just going to edge stitch it really close to the edge. So I'm going to go ahead and grab my pins and start pinning it all down right now. Okay, so I have the waistband pinned all the way around. So now I'm going to go to the machine and I'm going to do exactly what I did for the cuff. I'm going to stitch really close to this edge right here, doing an edge stitch. And then once that's done, I'm going to go ahead and do an edge stitch along the top of the waistband. If you look on step 23, you can see that they do have you edge stitching the bottom and the top of the waistband. So I'm going to go ahead and do both of those right now. Okay, so I have the waistband sewn. You can see it looks like this. It has the edge stitching here as well as around the top of the pant. I have that opening right there. So now I'm going to go ahead and grab my elastic, and you're going to cut your elastic, your waist measurement +1. So I'm going to go ahead and measure mine out now. Okay, this is good. I'm going to take a safety pin, put it through one end of the elastic, and now I'm just going to start pulling it through the opening. Okay, so I have my elastic in, and I'm just trying to flatten it out because it did roll up just a little bit. This is a really tight spot to get this wide width of an elastic through, but I got it through, and here is my pin over here. I'm going to go ahead and take it out, and I'm going to lap it over like this and sew it down. Okay, so the last step is for us to slip stitch this opening closed right here where we put the elastic through at. So I have my needle and thread right here, and I'm just going to start here on the inside and just close it up with a thread. Okay, so I have it all slip stitch closed. I'm gonna go ahead and clip my thread. I see a loose thread here. Okay, y'all, so of course, after I finish the pants, I want to tweak them a little bit. So you can see here, I've already chopped off some length right here because I kind of felt like for the fullness that they had, they were too long. So I wanted to chop off, how much did I chop off? 5 inches, including the cuff though. So I took off that amount from the hem, and now I also want to taper it in just a little bit, not a lot, because I still wanted to give it that gathered look at the end. So I'm just going to try the pants on and start pinning them to me so I can see you know, how full I want them or how much I want to take in. And then once I have that, I'm going to cut out 2 more leg bands, interface them, gather this up, and sew them the same exact way I did that. So I just want to show you all that I am going back in and I'm making just a little bit, some slight adjustments. So yeah, I'm just gonna go ahead and make those adjustments and then I will be completely finished with my pants. All right, y'all, so these are my final pants. So overall, I took in about 1 inch on both of the side seams. And then I also took in 5/8 of an inch on the inseam. I cut off about 5 inches, including the cuff. And then I removed the cuff from the scrap that I cut off and just attached it here. Did the gathers again and just sewed the cuff back on. All right, y'all, so that is all for this tutorial. Thank you all so much for joining me for the sew along for Butterick 6137. I really do hope that you all enjoyed it. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you all in our next sew along. Blessings, everyone. Bye.